Hello, YouTube, and welcome to another edition of Klausen Sagas with our historian,
Mikkel Klausen.
The one and the only. And today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about chivalry. Chivalry.
Not the game.
It's a game?
Yeah.
Two. What?
Yeah, there's 2 games called Chivalry.
Oh. Yeah, I hear the word chivalry a lot. I have for like 2 decades now. People talk about chivalry. And we hear it in HEMA. Well, it's not chivalric. Chivalry. Like it's some kind of interesting honor code. Now, I've done a bit of research myself. Definitely not your level. Hence why you're here. And we'll let you talk about a little bit about chivalry. Like, what is chivalry? Like, I mean, from like, and define it from like what people believe it is modernly and what it really is.
Modern people tend to think of chivalry as an exact code of conduct of knights, and it was always be the light of the darkness, be the one people look up to, and to a level that's true, but it's not like it was just honor-based. It also had deep religious connotations as well.
You need to elaborate, because, I mean, just saying religious honor, that has a lot of negative connotations as well.
Yes. So chivalry is kind of the overarching concept of what should a knight do, how should they act, where should they be, and honor is a part of that, and so is piety. So you have to be religious, you have to be pious, and in a Christian context, you have to go to church, you have to accept your king as, God's chosen king, you have to protect the church, which is a huge, important part of that. You can't just be burning down churches no matter where you are. If it's a Christian church, you need to protect the church.
Okay, so you can't really just be like, blah, 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 yeah, Jesus, yep, Jesus is great, sign of the cross, I'm good.
I'm sure there's knights that did that, pulled it off, but the expectation was actual piety.
We have piety, we have honor. What other values were in the chivalric code?
Martial prowess.
Martial prowess.
Which might surprise some in terms of chivalry, where they take it as a kind of a peaceful idea. But if you weren't good at fighting, you were lacking in being chivalric.
So you see people like they're going like chivalry, and they're like dressed in like their perfect armor, say, and stuff like that. Kind of reenacting what they believe to be chivalric martial arts. Mm-hmm. But if they can't fight or fight well, you say they're lacking chivalry?
Pretty much. Then it's kind of null and void. If you are expected to defend the people, defend the king, defend the church, and you can't fight to do that, you're not very chivalric.
Oh, that brings me another question. Mm-hmm. So could you be chivalric if you didn't support monarchy?
If you didn't support your monarchy, no.
What if you don't have a monarchy?
Then, you should probably get one if you're a knight to begin with. If you're a knight without a monarchy, you failed and they're dead for that reason.
What if you're like this modern idea of chivalry? Like there's no knights and no monarchy?
You should probably read up on what chivalry is in that case.
So is this a point of like basically romanticizing the idea of chivalry?
It's modernizing and romanticizing it. In the Middle Ages, they did romanticize chivalry, but this is very much a modern way that we're viewing it.
So there's a definite disconnect there. But what we would hear from chivalry in modern life, where we see it in the historical martial arts, I guess the reflections of it in historical martial arts, mm-hmm. and really what chivalry was.
Yes. For example, if you tell someone from England, the Queen is awful, she shouldn't be a monarch. Nowadays, people are just going to accept that and be like, that's your opinion, I disagree. But if you said that to a medieval knight, they would challenge you to a duel at the drop of a hat. As soon as you said that, it would be duel.
Really? So the fight would be on?
The fight would be on.
What if you declined?
Either jail or they would fight you anyways.
Oh. And let me guess. If they kill you, they go to court in front of the Queen and say, I defended your honor, and it's all good.
Yep. No one bat an eye.
Okay, so basically for a knight in that time period, really not a lose. There's no lose scenario here.
No.
1, you keep your social standing. 2, you prove your martial prowess, essentially increase your chivalry.
Yes,
rating.
and you prove your loyalty to your king. You might even get a reward for it.
Oh. So, are there any other factors we could talk about in chivalry?
Manners, surprisingly enough.
So, if you were just like a barbarian, you with your hands, maybe put your face in your food.
You'd probably get into a lot of fights with other knights.
Really?
Yeah, maybe not to the death fights, but I think there would be some issues for you.
It'd be like getting slapped in the hand with a table knife, like, hey.
Or a fist fight, really.
Fist fight.
Yeah, because even if you're not, your king doesn't want his knights killing each other, if one is, being less than chivalrous, then there might be some issues, there might be some scraps.
So you're saying is like during dinner you'd be expected to, be clean, have a nice quality garment on.
Say the right things.
Not burp and fart on the table.
Exactly.
Know how to use a fork, knife. So basically not be a slob.
Yes.
Act the part of.
Prim and proper.
Prim and proper. So please, thank you.
Yes. Make sure to stand and sit at the right time, drink at the right time, eat at the right time, in the right fashion.
Okay. So that's another chivalric quality. What other? Name another one.
So we've covered combat ability, we've covered piety, we've covered honor to a small degree, so we could always go back into honor a little bit. In terms of honor, you had to have respect for your superiors, you had to a degree, respect your inferiors and protect them. And those that had chivalry, they were specifically knights. So it comes from French word cheval, horse, and chevalier, knight, which eventually became chivalry. And so it was the knightly caste of society.
Now, who first defined this? It's chivalry. Who first used the term and defined chivalry?
It's hard to tell. Again, there's so much medieval literature that's been lost, and while you can find a tradition, it's nearly impossible, if not impossible, to actually find out who coined it.
Okay.
Or where it was coined. When was it used first? We're not too sure. But as of right now, I would say somewhere around 11th, 12th century. So
these rules, they essentially dictate how you interacted with women, other knights.
Oh yes, even romance was influenced by chivalry.
So if you were out there, partying up, you had girls every night back to your castle, that was chivalric?
Not really.
Not really? Okay.
That could be more of a gray area. But
so being a big time medieval player is considered
gray area.
Gray area. Gray area. Why gray area?
Because the ideal outcome for a knight is to get married.
Gotcha.
Right? It's to find, ideally a princess, but someone of nobility, someone of similar social standing, not lower, either equal or higher, and marry them. And that could be done even through combat. Maybe the king wants you to prove yourself in combat to marry the princess, and then you have to do that, fight their champion.
Oh yeah, so once you're kind of married off, you can't be out there
No, then it's pretty much you have no other women, just your wife, and if you want to go out and earn more fame for yourself, it's probably going to be combat related.
Gotcha. And so you can't really dishonor her as well.
No, that's a huge no.
And it can get you punished.
Punished, I imagine you would start some kind of blood feud with the princess's family, and if that happens, if they happen to be a princess, then now you're having an issue with the king.
Oh, yeah, that's not good.
Yeah, if it's another noblewoman, then maybe you get sued.
Sued?
You could do that. They could bring the issue to the king and be like, yeah, you know what, that's not very chivalrous of you. You're going to have to pay out a little bit.
Could you lose your knighthood?
I think that'd be extenuating circumstances, because your knighthood is tied directly to a title and land ownership and so on and so forth. And that kind of destabilizes the social caste. So if you're, kicking knights out left, right, and center, you're destabilizing your social caste. You're not, expanding your nobility through marriage and birth and so on.
Makes a little more sense. So how would that affect how knights interacted with each other? Let's say you knew a knight who wasn't very chivalrous. He pretended the part, but you all knew he was essentially, bare term, scumbag.
If they're not part of your retinue under the king, well, then you could probably challenge them to a duel to the death maybe, or first yield. You could make it a legal issue. If they're within your retinue, I think it becomes far more complicated, because now you can't be just killing other knights within your retinue, within your king's nobility.
So when you say retinue, what do you mean?
That would be those that are directly tied to the king as a vassal. So they've sworn loyalty already. And, the king is giving that money, rewards, land, so on and so forth. You fight for them. Anyone within that group, that select group, would be the retinue. Specifically knights.
Okay, so basically if you were for example, if you weren't all under that king, for example, like maybe you were part of like an earl's retinue, and some other rival earl had a knight there you didn't like and you had a beef, that'd be acceptable.
That would be acceptable, assuming your earl does not mind you picking fights with other,
maybe
earls.
He likes it.
Yeah, maybe that's the goal, maybe that's the plan. Maybe they don't mind, but maybe they don't want you to do that for whatever reason.
So it's your boss, it's your station, also part of chivalry.
Yes.
Gotcha. So fairly complex.
It's very complex, especially if you just start looking into how is it different region to region.
And really, when you look at this too, like how many knights were really followed this code to the letter?
We have examples of knights that didn't. We really can't tell too much unless we have a specific kind of chronicle, which aren't too common. But I imagine they're much like it is today, even though there's those that will say, they have honor or chivalry or they're honest. Not everyone that says they are actually are.
So in other words, what you're saying here is that maybe those who live close to the crown probably had to be more chivalrous in order to maintain status. Mm-hmm. Well, those who live much further away probably could get away with a little more.
Yeah.
So, okay, that makes sense. the old, when the cat's away, the mice will play.
Yep. Can your boss see what you're doing?
So now that we've talked about chivalry, these basic points of chivalry, how was it? It means it's very much seems like a very much a Christian concept, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how was it really instilled from person to person, generation to generation?
It could be done through many ways. A very common way is, the children of aristocracy, the higher echelons of society, would be put into school. And they would be given different pieces of literature, such as the ABCs of Aristotle. So what it is just the ABCs, but each letter stands for a different value or idea that they would be expected to learn and know. So something like honor, H for honor, something like that. It wasn't, hard set ABCs were always the exact same.
So instead of learning S is for snake, S is for sword.
Yes, or P for piety.
P for piety.
Yeah.
J for Jesus?
That could also be one. Other ways is they could be sent to, a lord's hall and to learn, manners. How to serve a table, how do people act while at the table, that kind of way. Or a child could end up being a squire and learn that way. So there's various ways the new generations could learn and have chivalry instilled in them.
So this kind of literature, what kind of other stories do they learn about?
It could be Arthurian legends. Unfortunately, we have lost a ton of literature from the Middle Ages.
Really? How so?
It's just throughout time, they get taken apart. Manuscripts are taken apart and used for something else, or they're just burned. They could be used to make new books.
Oh.
They could have, pages ripped out and used as a backing in a different book. So you would have this old vellum with still the letters in it as the backing of a cover for another manuscript.
Oh, wow.
So things like that, or fires, or floods, just age even. We've lost lots of literature. But that said, there is a lot of French chivalric literature. Chanson de geste. A lot of it is, poems or stories, like the Song of Roland is kind of a chivalric romantic poem. It's meant to lead the reader in the moral direction that it's taking them.
So is Roland a real person?
I don't think Roland is a real person because it is a romantic piece of literature.
Could he have been a real person? Maybe.
Could have been, but it's kind of like King Arthur.
Okay.
They could have been a real person, but it's more likely a conglomeration of 3 different people put into one figure.
So who was Roland? He's come up like a few times now. So who was Roland?
Roland was a knightly figure. It's a fairly short poem. It's romantic. And
like it's romantic, like, ooh, Roland.
Also, yes.
Oh, also, yes.
But there is romance involved. But it's very much just to lead people and children in this kind of moral direction. Treat women well, get the woman.
So you're saying is the Song of Roland was the Dr. Seuss of yesteryear.
It was one of many Dr. Seuss's of yesteryear.
Well, there you have it. So anything else you want to add on before we finish our episode today?
Say, if you want to learn about chivalry, look at the medieval stuff. Don't look at the modern stuff. The modern stuff is very much saturated with, current thought.
So we can say that the medieval chivalry was a very different idea, a very different lifestyle from the chivalry people talk about today.
Very, very different.
Great. All right. Thank you very much. It's been a good episode, and
keep your axes sharp and your mind sharper.